A very good afternoon to one and all. I am Dr. जावेदुल अजीज और आज हम जो पिछले क्लास में हमने एंशियंट इंडियन हिस्ट्री के बारे में बात की थी, एक इंट्रोडक्टरी क्लास दी थी, आज हम उसको आगे लेके पहला जो यूनिट है, पहला जो चैप्टर है इस कोर्स का, जिसका नाम है सोर्सेज ऑफ एंशियंट इंडियन हिस्ट्री, इस पे बात करेंगे। और इसके साथ साथ ही हम दूसरा जो इम्पोर्टेंट यूनिट है इस ब्लॉक का, इस कोर्स का दूसरा, जिसमें हम आर्कियोलॉजी से ज्यादा आर्कियोलॉजी पे फोकस करते हैं, तो सोर्सेज ऑफ एंशियंट इंडियन हिस्ट्री एंड आर्कियोलॉजी एज अ सोर्स फॉर रिकंस्ट्रक्टिंग द पास्ट, इन दोनों को एक साथ लेंगे। एंड दिस सेशन इज गोइंग टू बी अबाउट द सोर्सेज ऑफ एंशियंट इंडियन हिस्ट्री which include archaeological sources as well. So coming to the sources of ancient Indian history, before we discuss that, इससे पहले कि हम उस पर बात करें sources of ancient Indian history, तो important ये चीज है जानना कि source जो है, source किसको हम कहते हैं। So there can be different ways of defining a source, लेकिन एक historian के लिए और एक student of history के लिए सबसे आसान ये है, ये जानना है कि ये हम बोलेंगे कि that source is any material or literary evidence that can help us in reconstructing the past. Past को reconstruct करने में कोई भी material evidence या कोई भी literary evidence, जो उन सब सारी चीजों को हम सोर्सेस कहते हैं, जो हमें पास्ट को बनाने में, जो हमें पास्ट के बारे में इंफॉर्मेशन देते हैं, जिनके बेसिस पे हम पास्ट को रिकंस्ट्रक्ट कर सकते हैं, उनको हम सोर्सेस कहते हैं। एंड इन फैक्ट हिस्टोरियन के लिए सबसे ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट जो है वो सोर्स होता है, बिकॉज इट इज ओनली ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ सोर्सेज दैट हिस्ट्रीज कैन बी रिटन। इन फैक्ट अगर हम कहेंगे कि दैट सोर्सेज कॉन्स्टिट्यूट द बैकबोन ऑफ हिस्ट्री। अब जब हम एंशिएंट इंडियन हिस्ट्री की बात करते हैं तो बहुत सारे एविडेंसेस, मटेरियल एविडेंसेस या लिटरेरी डॉक्यूमेंट्स है हमारे पास, जिनके बेसिस पे हम एंशिएंट इंडियन हिस्ट्री को रिकंस्ट्रक्ट कर सकते हैं, जिनके बेसिस पे हम पास्ट को रिकंस्ट्रक्ट कर सकते हैं। एंड स्पेशली इन द केस ऑफ एंशिएंट इंडियन हिस्ट्री व्हिच इज इन एनी हिस्टोरिकल कैटेगराइजेशन, हिस्टोरिकल पीरियडाइजेशन, एंशिएंट हम सबसे पुराने वाले पार्ट को कहते हैं। और जो हिंदुस्तान या इंडियन सिविलाइजेशन आप कहेंगे, या इंडियन सब कॉन्टिनेंट, इवन साउथ एशिया का जो ये रीजन है, इसके पास्ट को, रिमोटेस्ट पास्ट को रिकंस्ट्रक्ट करने के लिए हमें जिन सोर्सेज की जरूरत है, जिन एविडेंसेस, मटेरियल या टेक्सचुअल एविडेंसेस की जरूरत है, उन एविडेंसेस को हम सोर्सेज कहते हैं। और आज का जो ये क्लास है, आज का जो ये सेशन है, ये उन सब सोर्सेज को डिस्क्राइब करने की कोशिश हम करेंगे, जिनके बेसिस पे हम एंशिएंट इंडियन हिस्ट्री को या हिंदुस्तान के एंशिएंट पार्ट ऑफ हिस्ट्री को रिकंस्ट्रक्ट कर सकते हैं। सो अब अगर तो दिस इज द फर्स्ट थिंग दैट अ स्टूडेंट ऑफ हिस्ट्री शुड नो। लेकिन इसके साथ साथ ये भी जानना है कि सोर्सेज जो है, सोर्सेज को क्रिटिकली यूज करना है, एक प्रोफेशनल तरीके से सोर्सेज को यूज करना पड़ता है। नॉट एवरीवन इज क्वालिफाइड एनफ टू मेक यूज ऑफ मटेरियल remains of the past or textual left out of a period for reconstructing the past. हर कोई ये नहीं कर सकता है। It requires training, it requires expertise, it requires a particular kind of methodology, जिसको एक हिस्टोरियन कर सकता है, एक प्रोफेशनल तरीके से, जिसको हम हिस्टोरिकल मेथड कहते हैं। So for writing history, we at the first instance we need sources. And secondly, then these sources need to be analyzed, these sources need to be interpreted, these sources need to be critically, there is a need to critically engage with all these kind of sources, and then the account that comes, the account that is produced, so that becomes the history of that very period. So this is, this I thought is very important before we start a discussion on sources of ancient Indian history. Now, once we are done with this ancient Indian history, sources on ancient Indian history, so when we go through these, when the session will move forward, जब हम आगे बात करेंगे इस पे, तो outcome क्या होना चाहिए? At the end, you should be able to understand what are the different type of sources on the basis of which ancient Indian history can be, written, on the basis of which past can be reconstructed. What are the different type of sources? Or in sources में से, which source can be considered as the most reliable source? सबसे ज़्यादा reliability किस source की है? So these are going to be the broad objectives of this session. तो एक source क्या है? What are the different type of sources that can help us in reconstructing the past of India, ancient past of India? Then what are the limitations of different kind of sources? How can the past be reconstructed on the basis of sources? All these things we will be discussing in this very session. So moving forward, if we talk about sources, especially in the context of ancient Indian history, तो ancient Indian history को लिखने के लिए, एंशियंट इंडिया हिस्ट्री प्रोड्यूस करने के लिए, या एंशियंट इंडिया पास्ट को रिकंस्ट्रक्ट करने के लिए हमें कुछ मेन सोर्सेज की जरूरत पड़ेगी. देयर आर डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ सोर्सेज ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ व्हिच पास्ट ऑफ एंशियंट इंडिया कैन बी रिकंस्ट्रक्टेड. सो ब्रॉडली अगर हम इनको कैटेगराइज करेंगे कि कौन से टाइप ऑफ सोर्सेज ये है, क्या कौन कौन से किस्म के सोर्सेज है ये, तो हम दे कैन बी कैटेगराइज्ड एज लिटरेरी सोर्सेज and archaeological sources. Now these are the two main category of sources that can help us in reconstructing the past of ancient India, that can help us in writing the history of ancient India. One more thing that I feel is important here is that you must have this realization before we get into the sources. ये realization आपको you should be aware of this thing, that कि human existence on earth, जब से इंसान का वजूद इस planet पे, जमीन पे हुआ है, तो till now, आज तक का जो टाइम है, this is a moment before now, this is our past. इस past का सबसे बड़ा overwhelming part of this past was that part where the man or woman or human being did not know how to read and write. जहाँ पे उसको पता नहीं था रीडिंग राइटिंग का, ये ना आर्ट ऑफ राइटिंग डेवलप हुआ था, ना पढ़ने का कोई अभी कुछ कोई तरीका भी डेवलप नहीं हुआ था. तो सबसे बड़ा पार्ट जो है ह्यूमन पास्ट का, दैट फॉल्स इन दैट वेरी पीरियड. और उस पीरियड को हम दैट part of the human existence, that part of human existence का वो part जो है, उसको हम prehistory part कहते हैं, इसको हम prehistory कहते हैं. So prehistory is that part of human life on the planet for which there is no written record available. For even we can say that it is that part when man had not learned the art of writing, and reading obviously was not there. So the overwhelming, we can say even 99% of human past falls in that very period, जिसको हम prehistoric period कहते हैं. So prehistory deals with that. और इस period की information, इस period में इंसान कैसे रहता था, वो कौन सा food खाता था, and what used to be his different exchanges एक इंसान के दूसरे इंसान के साथ, how he related to nature, how he dealt with the environment, how he understood environment, all these things, इनके बारे में जो हमें information मिलती है, तो that information we do not get from any literary text. वो हमें किसी किताब से, किसी manuscript से नहीं मिलती है, because man did not know how to read and write during that very period. तो इस पीरियड की, जिसको हम प्रीहिस्टोरिक पीरियड कहते हैं, इस प्रीहिस्टोरिक पीरियड की इंफॉर्मेशन अगर हमें मिलती है, that comes through the material remains of that very period, especially the stone tools. जो stone के tools human being ने use किए इस period में, we get information about that culture, that society from different type of tools. और ये category, then that means these tools became an important source for reconstructing the past of this very period, that is the prehistorical period. Then as man progressed, as human civilization progressed, as we moved, as the human life progressed, जब इंसान आगे बढ़ता गया, हजारों साल, लाखों सालों के बाद हम देखते हैं कि that then man also learned the art of writing. He invented rather in this art of writing. And then we find certain inscriptions. We find certain engravings on rocks, on metallic plates, on in the form of manuscripts, on big they were written on leaves or bark of tree. और बहुत सारे तरीके थे लिखने के. जब राइटिंग इनकी इन्वेंशन हो गई तो उसके बाद हमारे पास पास्ट को रिकंस्ट्रक्ट करने के लिए और भी सोर्सेज है which we call as the literary sources. So there are two broad categories of sources on the basis of which the history of ancient India can be written, on the basis of which the past of ancient India can be reconstructed, and they are broadly literary sources and archaeological sources. So the significance, now you should be able to appreciate the significance of both of them, because archaeological sources throw light on that period, especially they become indispensable for the prehistorical period. वहाँ पे इनका कोई सबस्टिट्यूट नहीं है, वहाँ पे और कोई आर्कियोलॉजिकल सोर्सेज के बगैर और कोई तरीका नहीं है उस पीरियड के पास्ट के बारे में लिखने का, और कोई तरीका नहीं है. We completely rely on archaeological sources, but that does not mean that archaeology is essentially, or it is only required in for that very period of time. सिर्फ वही पे archaeology की utility है या importance है. Archaeology can help us in reconstructing medieval past. It can help us in making or drawing good conclusions about the modern history as well. जहाँ पे हमें literary textual evidences available है, वहाँ पर भी हमें archaeology से उनको और further हम कुछ further additions, further explanations provide कर सकती है archaeology, and it can make history more nearer to the truth. So because in history we say that any historical account, जो भी historical account है, it is based on the study of sources, interpretation of sources. So there is every possibility. There is possibility that the historian who is actually analyzing the sources, interpreting the sources, there is possibility that he may make certain after all he's a human being. So, and as a human being he has his own subjectivities, he has his own biases. So anything that a historian would write about the past cannot be taken as an absolutely objective account. So there can be limitations in every account. लेकिन आर्कियोलॉजिकल जितनी ब्रॉड रेंज होगी सोर्सेज की, उतना हम कह सकते हैं कि दैट हिस्टोरिकल अकाउंट रियलिटी के नजदीक आ सकता है. सो मोर सोर्सेज एम्प्लॉयड बाय हिस्टोरियन, more are the chances of reaching closer to what actually happened, because historian का काम जो होता है वो कोशिश करता है कि that he draws a picture of, he reconstructs the past. And he makes an attempt to reconstruct it as closely as it might have happened. Whether that happens, whether that is possible, क्या वो ऐसा हो सकता है या ऐसा हो पाता है, that is a different discussion that can be discussed elsewhere. But coming back to our actual theme of the day, that is sources of ancient Indian history. तो अब हम देखेंगे कि जो डिफरेंट सोर्सेज हम एम्प्लॉय कर सकते हैं, जिन डिफरेंट सोर्सेज को हम यूज कर सकते हैं फॉर राइटिंग द हिस्ट्री ऑफ एंशिएंट इंडिया और फॉर रिकंस्ट्रक्टिंग एंशिएंट इंडियन पास्ट, वो कौन से हैं. सो एज आई सेड, one category of sources is the literary sources. अब literary sources एंशिएंट इंडिया के बारे में जो literary sources हैं वो कौन कौन से, if we just then we will discuss them one by one. But firstly, if we see what are the different type of literary sources that can help us in reconstructing ancient India's past. तो एक category जो सबसे important category है इसमें, जो which throws a flood of light on on those times, that those sources जो literary, जिनको literary sources की वो category जो है within the broader category of literary sources जो है, एक जो है बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट जो है, दैट इज द वैदिक लिटरेचर. सो पहला जो है दैट इज वैदिक लिटरेचर. देन सेकंड कम्स जो लिटरेरी सोर्सेज में ही है, सेकंड कैटेगरी इज दैट ऑफ द जैन एंड बुद्धिस्ट लिटरेचर. थर्ड जो इसी लिटरेरी कैटेगरी में पुरानास को भी हम इंक्लूड कर सकते हैं। देन एंशिएंट इंडियन हिस्ट्री, साउथ इंडियन हिस्ट्री के बारे में जो लिटरेरी सोर्सेज हमें इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोवाइड करती है, दैट इज द संगम लिटरेचर। देन among the literary sources we have certain key texts, literary pieces of literature, like Katalya's Arthashastra, that also tells us a lot about the Mauryan Empire. Same way, we have biographies, we have poetry, we have dramas, and these poetry, biographies are accounts which are जो किसी इंसान के बारे में, किसी किंग या किसी क्वीन, एवं biographies can be on ordinary persons, लेकिन जिस पीरियड की हम बात करते हैं वहाँ पे ट्रेडिशन ये था कि किंग्स, क्वींस या इन्फ्लुएंशियल पीपल इन द सोसाइटी जो थी, उनके लाइफ अकाउंट्स लिखे जाते थे, जिनको हम बायोग्राफीज कहते हैं। सो बायोग्राफीज कैन हेल्प अस इन रिकंस्ट्रक्टिंग इंडियाज पास्ट। ये हमें, इट कैन एक्ट एज अ सोर्स ऑफ एंशिएंट इंडियन हिस्ट्री। सेम वे देयर इज पोएट्री, इसी तरीके से कुछ ड्रामाज है, एपिक्स है, जो हमें मदद करते हैं इन writing ancient Indian history. So Buddhist and Jain literature is there, Vedic literature is there, Buddhist and Jain literature is there, Puranas are there, dramas, poetry, even biographies are there. So these are the categories of literary sources. Literary sources जो है textual sources. So these are the broad category of sources which can help us in writing the history of ancient India. Now coming to the first जो category है हमारी sources की, literary sources की जो पहली category जो हम कहते हैं, so Vedic literature. So Vedic literature it is religious in nature, it is considered very sacred for Hinduism. So these are the basis of Hinduism. So but this literature also tells us a lot about the times of some 1500 BC to 100 BC. So if for this period, this Vedic literature, besides it is religious value, so they help us. They can be used as a historical source. So they tell us about those times. They tell us about how man lived in those times and how women lived in those times, how human beings interacted with nature, what were their transactions, इनके economic basis क्या थी. So they tell us a lot about the life and times of human being in the remote past. So Vedic literature helps as it acts as a very important source of ancient Indian history. They can help us. For a historian, they are extremely important, significant for reconstructing India's past. और ये जो वैदिक लिटरेचर है, सो वैदिक लिटरेचर में इनफैक्ट हम कहते हैं कि दैट अर्लीस्ट नोन लिटरेचर जो है इंडियन सब कॉन्टिनेंट के बारे में, दैट इज द वैदिक लिटरेचर। एंड वैदिक लिटरेचर में जो हम देखते हैं कि दैट वैदिक जो है, वेद, इट हैज ये जो वर्ड है इसका ओरिजिन जो है विद से हुआ है, व्हिच मींस टू नो। सो वैदिक लिटरेचर इज ऑल, यू कैन से इट इज नॉलेज, it is and this knowledge can help us in reconstructing that very period. और अब अगर हम वैदिक लिटरेचर पे फोकस करेंगे तो ब्रॉडली वैदिक लिटरेचर में हमें we have it consists of 3 different literary works, classes of literary works. वैदिक लिटरेचर 3 टाइप के लिटरेरी वर्क्स हम इसमें इंक्लूड करते हैं। वन इज एक है जिसमें हम which is a collection of prayers, hymns, incantations, benedictions, sacrificial formulas, etc. So one category of Vedic literature is this, and this ये है a collection of rhymes, collection of prayers, hymns, benedictions, sacrificial formulas. इसको इस Vedic literature it is further divided into 4 these works, and each work is Veda. So we have the oldest work, that is the Rig Veda or Rig Ved. Then we have Atharved, we have Samaved, and we have Yajurved. So all these Vedas, this Vedic literature, all these Vedas जो है, they provide us information. They some tell us about the economy, some tell us about the different types of taxes that were taken, whether the concept of king was there or not. Even some are about how the sacrifices should be made, and then there are some are about the music. So elaborate procedures for sacrifices, some are are also there in the Vedas. And then the Vedas इनकी explanation provide करने के लिए to for further as an explanation to different Vedas, we have what is termed as the limbs of Vedas, Vedangas. So they provide explanatory, it is a sort of appendix to the Vedas, which provide us further information, which provide further explanation to what is mentioned in the Vedas. So this is one category of जो literary sources है Vedic literature में. So we have the Vedas, Rigved, Atharved, Samaved, and then Yajurved. All these are the Veda, and these are full of, they are loaded with information, and historian it is a gold mine of information about this very period of time. So from everyday affairs to the structure of polity, the nature of economy, even contacts, position of woman, all these things we can get, these kind of information can be gleaned from the Vedic literature. Then we have also in this category of in this category of literary literature, Vedic literature के साथ साथ हमें फिर besides Vedas we have texts like Brahmanas, Aryankas, and Upanishads, and they also can be included in Vedic literature. But these are terms at times these Brahmanas, Aryankas, and Upanishads, sometimes they are referred as the later Vedic literature. And they are also they also provide us information. They are also very valuable besides their religious significance. They have a huge historical significance as a historical source as well, because they also provide us information about the period, about different practices, about different notions that prevailed in the society, about different contacts between one society and other society. So this was about the Vedic literature. Then we have another category of literature which can help us in in writing history of in reconstructing past ancient Indian history के बारे में. जो दूसरी कैटेगरी है Vedic literature के साथ साथ दूसरा जो है, that is the Buddhist and Jain literature. So Vedic literature के साथ साथ ही Buddhist और Jain literature को भी अगर हम देखेंगे तो that also provides us information that can also act as a very important source of information, a very important source for reconstructing the history of ancient India. And Buddhist और Jain literature की अगर हम बात करेंगे तो we see that the Jain literature, whereas Vedas were written in Sanskrit, उनकी जो language है Vedas की वो संस्कृत है, तो यहाँ पे हम देखते हैं कि Jain literature जो है, Jain literature was produced in Prakrit and Buddhist literature was produced in Pali language. So in 3 languages, this literature is available in 3 languages. Vedic literature in Sanskrit, then Jain literature in Prakrit, and Buddhist literature in Pali. And about the Buddhist literature, जब हम Buddhist literature की बात करते हैं तो ये जो Pali texts है, खासकर Buddhist literature की बात हम करते हैं तो they the important thing about is this Buddhist literature जो है कि most of the Buddhist literature it was composed after the death of Lord Buddha. Buddha के death के बाद ये compose हुआ, and it was composed in the form of Tripitakas. So 3 baskets, अगर आप इसको ट्रांसलेट करेंगे, 3 baskets which tells us about the state of affairs in India in the time of Buddha. बुद्धा के लाइफ के दौरान या उनके बाद कैसी सिचुएशन थी हिंदुस्तान में, व्हाट वाज लाइफ लाइक, हाउ ह्यूमन बीइंग्स इंटरेक्टेड, हाउ दे लिव्ड, कैसे अफेयर्स को मैनेज करते थे, अपने पॉलिटी क्या थी, इकोनॉमी किस टाइप की थी, इसके बारे में हमें बुद्धिस्ट लिटरेचर की जो त्रिपिटिकास है which were composed after the death of Buddha, 3 baskets, 3 you can say 3 baskets of literature जो है, they provide us information about not only the life and times after Buddha, but they reflect upon the life and times during the time of Buddha itself. और जो ये 3 जिनको हम त्रिपिटिकास कहते हैं, so they are now available in different languages because Buddhism spread out to different parts of not only in Asia, it spread out to different parts. It traveled to Japan, though it originated in India. So, but then it moved on. It diffused to Japan, China, Tibet, and therefore we see that Buddhist literature जो है, ये बहुत सारी languages में अब translate हो चुका है. And the 3 जिनको हम 3 पिटिकास कहते हैं, so Buddhist literature जो 3 books है Buddhist literature की, so they are, एक को हम कहते हैं Sutta Pitaka. So same way there is Vinaya Pitaka and then there is Abhidhamma Pitaka. These are the 3 books which provide us information about, they provide us information about the life and times during the time of Buddha. So say for example, अगर हम Sutta Pitaka देखेंगे, तो it contains discourses of Buddha on various doctrinal issues. It is in the form of poems, dialogue form. So it tells us about the doctrinal issues जो है Buddhism के, it tells us about that. So then same way अगर हम Abhidhamma Pitaka की बात करेंगे, so it contains matters related to the Buddhist philosophy. So ये Buddhist philosophy के बारे में हमें बताता है. So we have the Buddhist literature telling us about the Buddhist philosophy, telling us about the Buddhist doctrinal discourses क्या थे, and then the Buddhist literature also tells us about the Sangha. So all these this is a valuable kind of information. So this Buddhist literature is not only confined to the Tripitakas. We see in the form of Buddhist literature में हम मिलिंद पानो, एक जो जिसको हम ट्रांसलेट करके क्वेश्चंस ऑफ मिलिंद कहते हैं, that is also there, and it was a dialogue between Meninder and a Buddhist monk. Indo-Greek एक king थे Meninder. He had a dialogue with a Buddhist monk, and then the dialogue is in the form of it's in the form of a text, and that is called Milindopano. And in this dialogue there are a number of questions raised by Meninder, and then they are being answered by the monk. And this compilation, this also throws a lot of information about the Indo-Greek period. It tells us about those times. So this way we can say that Buddhist and Jain literature जो है, Buddhist literature which is largely in Pali language, even the Ashokan inscriptions जो है वो Pali language में ही थे, and this throws a lot of light on the ancient Indian history. ये बहुत information हमें provide करता है about ancient Indian history के बारे में. And same way we have this so we have Jain literature which also provides us gives us good insight into the past, and it is equally valuable. So Vedic literature, Buddhist and Jain literature, these are the 2 categories, but this is the religious literature. But एक तो religious value है ही इसका, but at the same time it can be used as a source of history by a historian. We can extract, we can glean information from these texts, these revealed Vedic literature, we can these which are considered to be the revelations of gods. So we can also, as a student of history, as a historian, we can make use of this literature, and we can हम जान सकते हैं कि उस टाइम में how man lived, how he conducted his affairs वगैरह, जो भी एक पास्ट के बारे में जो भी मामला है वो हम इसके बेसिस पे जान सकते हैं. बट both this Vedic literature and Buddhist and Jain literature, it is largely described as, इसको हम religious literature के तौर पे, इसको हम secular literature नहीं कहते हैं, it's a religious literature. लिटरेचर का ही, लिटरेरी सोर्सेज का ही एक पार्ट है जो जिसका नेचर रिलीजियस है, जो जिनकी एक रिलीजियस नेचर है इनका, they are considered to be very sacred, revealed kind of books, one for Hinduism, and second for Buddhism, and the third for Jainism. So, but besides that, they are having a huge, historical significance as a source of history for a historian. So, but then literary sources में हमें कुछ sources ऐसे भी हैं जिनका religious nature नहीं है, and then they can also, that means that is the secular literature, and in that secular literature we have, we can talk about, in that we have biographies, we have in Gupta period we have Kalidas, and in Abhijanana Shakuntalam Kalidas ki, that can help us. This is secular literature. This is not a religious literature. Same way we have biographies about the sages of that very time, about the founders of certain religions. Unki biographies hai. So we have Vanabhata's biography of Buddha. We have other biographies, and they can also help us in reconstructing the past. So this is the secular kind of literature है जिसमें हम कालिदासा की बात कर सकते हैं. We can घोष की हम बुद्धाचरिता की बात कर सकते हैं. We can talk about number of there are number of dramas like Vishaka Datta का Mudurakshasa जो है, that is also there. So we have a lot of literature which can be described, इसको हम describe कर सकते हैं as a secular literature, and but that also helps us. That is also a very important source of ancient Indian history. So same way we have Kautilya's Arthashastra. It is a book. It is a text on statecraft, how the affairs of the state should be managed. कि कैसे एक स्टेट को रन करना चाहिए, कैसे फॉरेन अफेयर्स दूसरे स्टेटों के साथ कैसे मामलात, कैसे how should your approach be to your neighboring territories, आप internal order कैसे maintain करेंगे. So there is a book which came from which was Arthashastra जिसको हम कहते हैं. Kautilya is considered as the author of that very book, though the latest research tells us that it was not composed in one moment. So it was also certain parts of this text, this book, were later additions. But this book provides us valuable information about the Mauryan Empire, and it tells us about this can be used as a source because it tells us about how the state conducted its affairs, how much taxes were charged. So it tells about how taxes were charged, what was the mechanism of charging taxes, how what type of administration was there, what was the role of the king, what mattered him the most. So how the soldiers were maintained, what were the priorities of the state, how the state should conduct its affairs, how should it deal with the neighboring states. So this is considered as a masterpiece in statecraft. So we have this also, and this can also help us in reconstructing India's past. Then we have besides this, we have also a category of texts, category of literary sources which are termed as Puranas. So Puranas also help us. It's also they also have a religious value, but they are dated in the Gupta and post-Gupta period. के बारे कहा जाता है कि they came into being in the Gupta and the post-Gupta period, and then they also provide us information about different aspects of life. So they contain information, they throw light on political history and genealogies of dynasties. डायनोलॉजीज की एक genealogy वगैरह वो उस पे हमें ये Puranas they provide us information about that. We have similarly we have epics like Mahabharata and Ramayana. So they can help. They are very helpful in reconstructing the past of that period. So if we look at the literary sources, if we sum it up and see the prominent literary sources that help us in reconstructing India's past, they include Vedic literature, Buddhist and Jain literature, Puranas, Upanishads. Then we have epics that can also, they are very valuable, besides their religious value, huge religious value. They are considered as sacred, and for now, times immemorial, we see that the Indian society, has drawn inspiration and guidance from these epics. So that being there, but they have a huge historical importance as well, because they tell us about the times, the economy, the culture, the way of life, which is included in culture itself. They tell us about that, they inform us about that. But a student of history has to be careful in making use of all these kind of sources. So we have Vedic literature, we have the Buddhist and Jain literature, we have Puranas, we have later Vedic literature, we have epics, we have biographies, we have dramas, we have huge corpus of literature that can help us in reconstructing India's past. And about the south, southern part of India, South India, we have a corpus of literature which is termed as Sangam literature. And this also has a huge, historical importance, because Sangam is basically, Sangam, if we say it's this literature, Sangam literature is in the form of poems. Some, hundreds of thousands of poems were there. And this compilation of, poems, these poems were produced in gatherings in a sort of college format, and that was termed as Sangam. So this was produced. It was like Sangam was an association of poets, and it could have been the rulers, kings there being the participants, courtesans, and then common man as well, war heroes. They produced this literature under that grand in that grand gathering, and this came to be called as Sangam literature. And Sangam literature has also a huge importance, because it tells us about it throws a lot of light on ancient South Indian history, ancient South Indian history. So Sangam literature भी हमें बहुत ज़्यादा information provide करता है about the history of South India. So this is another, this Sangam literature, it can also be this also helps us in making good interpretations about the ancient Indian history. So these are the type of sources that can help us in literary sources that can help us in reconstructing India's past. So coming to the second category of sources, जब हम second category, so literary sources से अगर हम आगे देखेंगे, and in the beginning I said that literary sources are they can help us in reconstructing that past where a man had learned the art of writing and reading. Literary sources they cannot help us in knowing about the times and about human life and the way human beings conducting their affairs in the period when human being did not actually know how to read and write. उस period के बारे में जो हमें information provide करता है, that is the archaeological source. Archaeology as a discipline helps us in reconstructing India's past. Now, before we come to that means it's a separate category of sources which are material in nature, which are not textual in nature. So these kind of sources can also help us in reconstructing India's past. And as I said in the beginning of this very session, this talk, I said that human existence on earth का सबसे बड़ा part जो है, it consists of that part. It is that part, when man did not know anything about reading and writing. So उस period के बारे में information जो हमें provide कर सकता है, that is archaeological sources. And when we say archaeological sources, so it means the material left outs of human beings. जो इंसान ने कोई भी material पीछे छोड़ा है, be it in the form of stone tools, metallic artifact, कोई भी जिनको मैंने यूज किया, डिस्कार्ड किया, वो सारे ऑब्जेक्ट जो है उनके बेसिस पे वो हमें इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोवाइड कर सकते हैं. एंड दैट इज व्हाट वी टर्म एज, उनको हम आर्कियोलॉजिकल सोर्सेज कहते हैं. अब अगर आर्कियोलॉजिकल सोर्सेज स्टोन के भी हो सकते हैं, आर्कियोलॉजिकल सोर्सेज में हम मेटेलिक सोर्सेज भी हो सकते हैं. दे कैन बी इन द फॉर्म ऑफ कॉइन्स, दे कैन बी इन द फॉर्म ऑफ inscriptions, so they can be in the form of tools. All these categories, all these collectively are dealt under the broad category of archaeological sources. Or archaeological sources, about now you should be able to appreciate the significance of archaeological sources, क्योंकि archaeological sources हमें उस period के बारे में information provide कर सकते हैं जिस period के बारे में, जिस period of human existence के बारे में हमें literary sources कोई information provide नहीं कर पाते हैं. Now, archaeological sources, when we talk of archaeological sources, so we see that archaeological sources में हम we can पहले ये देखना है कि that the archaeological sources they are very important, but not that easy to use them, because it needs a lot of expertise to make use of archaeological sources, be they the stone tools or be they the coins or inscriptions. इसलिए हम देखते हैं कि archaeology में sub disciplines भी develop हो गए हैं. For example, for the study of coins, there is a separate discipline of numismatics. For the study of these inscriptions, we have a separate branch of जिसको हम epigraphy कहते हैं. Same way, archaeology over the period of time has grown manifold as a discipline, and now there is there are branches like underwater archaeology. We have different, जिन हम बात करेंगे in our next session, we'll be talking about that. So archaeological sources, we have a lot of archaeology can help us in reconstructing the ancient Indian history, especially about that part for which we did not have any literary sources available. लेकिन उसके साथ साथ हमें आर्कियोलॉजी जिस पीरियड के बारे में लिटरेरी सोर्सेज अवेलेबल भी है, उस पे भी हमारी इंफॉर्मेशन को बहुत हद तक आर्कियोलॉजी जो है, आर्कियोलॉजिकल सोर्सेज सप्लीमेंट कर सकते हैं, कम्प्लीमेंट कर सकते हैं. जो गैप्स है वो आर्कियोलॉजी के थ्रू हम फिल कर सकते हैं. सो आर्कियोलॉजी प्लेज a very important role in helping us in reconstructing the history of ancient India. Now, अगर हम आर्कियोलॉजी पे जब हम बात करेंगे तो then as I was trying to explain कि आर्कियोलॉजी अगर बेसिकली हम देखेंगे, आर्कियोलॉजी is a systematic way of studying the material remains of human settlements. Human settlement के जो material remains है उनको जब हम study करते हैं, उस study को हम that study falls under archaeology. So it can be through exploratory means कि जो surface पे ही available है उनकी study, like some survey is made and certain tools are found, तो उनकी analysis, उनकी study को अगर की जाएगी तो वो भी archaeology करते हैं. Then it can also go to the studying of the existing जो erect monuments है. So that falls under archaeology, can help us in knowing that. Then we will get into how archaeology can help us in reconstructing past. लेकिन archaeology के अंदर हम क्या-क्या पहले in the discipline, under the discipline of archaeology, कौन-कौन से what can be included in it. So archaeology में it studies, it is a discipline for the study of material remains of human settlement. जो भी चाहे वो visible हो या अभी हमें वो ना दिख रहे हो. So if there are monuments, they can be studied under the discipline of archaeology. If there are coins, those coins can also be studied under the banner of archaeology. So in the same way, if there are inscriptions, those inscriptions can also be studied under the banner of archaeology. Now, because archaeology is now, over the period of time, it had assumed huge significance, and therefore sub-specializations within archaeology have also come up. We have a separate, in archaeology, there is a separate field for the study of coins, and that is termed as numismaticus. In archaeology itself, there is a separate field for the study of epigraphs, and that study of inscriptions, and that we categorize that is described as epigraphy. And same way, in archaeology, we also discuss, we also try to study, in fact, in archaeology, monuments which are there existing, the parts of monuments, they are also studied under archaeology. So it's a broad discipline, but like history, archaeology का जो objective जो है, archaeology is also for reconstructing the past. So history and archaeology therefore can be taken as sister disciplines, but whereas their objectives, इनका जो मकसद जो है, whereas that is same, that is the reconstruction of past. Historian is there to reconstruct the past based on different sources. Same way, archaeology as a discipline is also there, and archaeology is also there to reconstruct the past. But the method of these two disciplines, methods are different. Archaeology reconstructs history on the basis of material remains, whereas history reconstructs histories on a different category of sources. So, in terms of objectives, both these disciplines share the same objectives, but their methods are different. In the context of India, archaeology at times provides us a very important, source for writing history, for knowing about the human past, and it is not only through the study of not only through the study of existing, जो हमें दिखते हैं monuments, but also through coins, जिसको हम कह रहे थे कि that numismatics is a sub-branch in archaeology which studies coins, and same way there is epigraphy, and then we have different branches of archaeology, which we'll be taking up in the next, in our next session. So then another category, before I get into that, a brief about numismatics and epigraphy, because these are very important. Coins in the Indian context, coins have helped us in reconstructing. In a huge way, they have helped us in reconstructing India's past. So coins के basis पे हमें बहुत ज़्यादा information मिलती है, especially about the Gupta and the post-Gupta period. Coins help us in about the Indo-Greeks, about different contacts that India had. So coins in itself can study of coins in itself throws a lot of light on different aspects of life during a particular period. So that is why coins की एक separate branch जो है archaeology के अंदर numismatics जिसको हम कहते हैं, that has developed, and that is helping a lot in reconstructing past, especially in the case of North India. Same way we have epigraphy, and that also helps us in reconstructing India's past in a huge way. So if we focus on coins, certain examples may help us in they may help us in developing a proper perspective about the significance of coins in the reconstruction of history. कैसे हमें numismatics help कर सकती है in knowing or in reconstructing India's past. Say for example, we have coins have been, archaeologists have found hoards of coins at different sites, and these coins, they were sometimes discovered during digging of a field, or through excavations, or while constructing a building, or accidentally. So different तरीकों से कॉइन्स को डिस्कवर किया गया, उनको पाया गया, कभी कोई नई बिल्डिंग बनानी हो तो वहां पे. सो व्हेन दीज कॉइन्स, irrespective of how they were discovered, and there can be number of ways through which coins may have been discovered, or they are continuously being discovered. लेकिन अब इनकी स्टडी, इन कॉइन्स की जब हम स्टडी करते हैं, जिसको हम न्यूमिस्मैटिक्स कहते हैं, व्हाट डज इट टेल अस? क्या कौन सा किस टाइप की इंफॉर्मेशन ये प्रोवाइड कर सकते हैं? हाउ कैन कॉइन्स हेल्प अस इन रिकंस्ट्रक्टिंग द पास्ट? हाउ कैन दैट बी डन? इट्स अ ह्यूज, it's a very big field, but at the very basic level, I think it is very important to just acquaint you about the basics of क्या हमें इससे मिल सकता है, so that you think over it, and you peep in, you get at least you explore it further on your own. So how can this be helped? How these coins can help us? So when the coins are found, they can tell us the composition of the coin itself can tell us about which material was available to the people. So it tells about it will tell us about it will tell us about what knowledge the people of that very time had about metals. So if you are finding gold coins, then first thing is that you get to know that these people knew there is some metal called gold. And then if you find more gold coins in a region, then this will tell you about the circulation of gold, that it was readily available. If you rarely find it, there are less coins of gold and more coins of copper, then probably you can guess that copper was readily available, but gold was not. So coin itself, the composition of the coin, that can throw a lot of light on that very region, that very time. So this is just the composition of the coin. Then the extent of the quantity of coins that are found at a place, that can also throw us that can also throw light on other aspects about the availability of metals and all that. Coins can also tell us about the trade transactions, trade connections of one region with another region. So that is why numismatic study of coins has emerged as a specialized discipline under archaeology, because coins can help us, numismatics can throw a lot of light, and it can help us in reconstructing history in a better way. So that is one. And then we have also inscriptions also as a source, and as an archaeological source. They also help us to a great extent in reconstructing past. And where there is dearth of literary sources, where other sources are not readily available, we can reconstruct past of a region on the basis of inscriptions if they are available. So in the Indian context, we get a lot of information from the Ashokan inscriptions, and these inscriptions were issued. They were in engravings on rocks, जिनको हम रॉक एडिक्ट्स कहते हैं, ये फरमान हुआ करते थे फ्रॉम द साइड ऑफ अशोका. What these farmans were, what was their nature, that we will be discussing, elsewhere. लेकिन inscriptions also, the way coins help us in reconstructing the past, inscriptions also help us a lot in reconstructing the past. And therefore, like there is numismatics, same way there is another archaeological source, which we sub branch of archaeology, which is termed as epigraphy. So if we then define epigraphy is study of inscriptions. So the study of inscriptions, in fact, is termed as epigraphy. The way the study of coins is termed as numismatics, same way the study of inscriptions is termed as epigraphy. And these, inscriptions, these instructions, inscriptions, जिसको हम फिर एपिग्राफी के अंदर स्टडी करते हैं, तो ये सील्स पे हो सकते थे, ये कॉपर प्लेट्स पे हुआ करते थे, टेम्पल्स के वॉल्स पे कहीं कहीं, वुडन टैबलेट्स पे ये इंस्क्रिप्शंस थे, स्टोन पिलर्स पे, रॉक सरफेसेस पे, कभी कभी ब्रिक्स पे, कभी कभी इमेजेस पे. जो इनका स्क्रिप्ट है, जो स्क्रिप्ट फॉलो किया गया, दैट आल्सो हेल्प्स द हिस्टोरियन in number of ways. So अगर हम that means जो inscriptions की जो study है, जो epigraphy जिसको हम कहते हैं, epigraphy can also help us a lot in knowing, in reconstructing the past, especially the social aspect of the past, social history को reconstruct करने में, social history में inscriptions हमें एक बहुत ही important source की तरह हम use कर सकते हैं. Like coins can be, numismatics can be used for doing economic history, same way epigraphy can help us in doing social history, besides doing other histories as well. So there are different even inscriptions की अगर आप देखेंगे तो you would in next in the coming classes, coming sessions, we will take it further, we will elaborate it further, and you will find that आप देखेंगे, हम discuss करेंगे कि how inscriptions helped, how epigraphy helped us in reconstructing the history of the Mauryan period, because for a long for a long period of time, the inscriptions, Ashokan inscriptions, they remained there undeciphered, and then it was when it was deciphered, it threw a lot of light on different aspects of the Mauryan Empire. So तो हम उस पे बात करेंगे आगे. So आर्कियोलॉजी के अंदर जो हमने अभी देखा कि आर्कियोलॉजी के अंदर जो सब डिसिप्लिन्स इमर्ज हुए हैं, वो इस वजह से भी इमर्ज हुए हैं कि सिग्निफिकेंस जो है डिफरेंट मटेरियल रिमेन्स की, वो बहुत ज़्यादा अप्रिशिएट, वो बहुत हद तक बढ़ गई थी. इसलिए इट वाज थॉट दैट एंड इट वाज then well thought out that there should be separate disciplines for making study of inscriptions and coins, and these help us in reconstructing in a long way, reconstructing the history of ancient India. So we discussed about Vedic literature, Jain and Buddhist literature, archaeological sources, Puranas, different other sources, but one important category of sources is also the accounts of the foreigners. So travelers जो different regions से यहाँ पे जिन्होंने travel किया हिंदुस्तान में, they left certain accounts about India. So be they the pilgrims who came in as pilgrims from China to learn about Buddhism, they left out descriptions of this land. इस जगह के बारे में उन्होंने अपनी descriptions दी है, उनके अपने accounts है. वो accounts जिनको हम foreigners accounts भी कहते हैं, travel accounts कहते हैं. So they also tell us about, they also can be used as a source of history. वो हमें बहुत हद तक मदद कर सकते हैं हिंदुस्तान की हिस्ट्री को रिकंस्ट्रक्ट करने में, एंशिएंट हिस्ट्री को. So जिसमें आप आई संघ की बात कर सकते हैं, फहन की बात कर सकते हैं, ह्यून सॉन्ग की बात कर सकते हैं. सेम वे वी हैव अदर फॉरेन ट्रैवलर्स जिनकी हम आगे बात करते रहेंगे. And but those need to be taken not at their face value, because there are number of limitations in using them as a literary source, because they came from outside. And perhaps शायद उनको ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग यहाँ की लैंग्वेज की, यहाँ की कल्चर की उतनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं थी. इस वजह से हम देखते हैं कि उनमें कुछ कभी there are some misjudgments, and that we'll be discussing in our next sessions. So with this, I take leave. Thank you very much for listening to me. And in our next session, we'll be taking up another topic. We'll be focusing on archaeology, because it's a very specialized kind of theme. So हम next session में ले लेंगे, and then we will move on to the rest of the units. So I stop here, and I thank you all for being patient. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the session. Bye. Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, Assalamu Alaikum, all wishes and good wishes to you. Thank you very much.